Been driving all along, feel like I'm dreaming. Okay.
Anything that dispute what you say, has anyone taken your challenge?
Nobody's taking my challenge.
Who have you debated?
Whoever did debate.
Have you ever had like a public debate with anybody? Like it's on YouTube, we can see, or no?
Haven't had a public debate.
You're open to debating anybody?
I'm open, yeah.
Okay, so if we set up anything with anyone else that's maybe expert in the area of topic that you know, you're okay with a panel like that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, keep going. We'll get you a follow-up.
I really appreciate it, Billy. Thanks so much for interacting.
So I don't know if you know what's going on. Billy Carson, that dude, sat down with Wes Huff. Wes Huff is
that dude's sharp.
brilliant.
Very sharp.
Very sharp, very brilliant.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a slaughter.
It was
I didn't know this happened,
Bro.
but I already know it's like,
Bro,
was.
it was a slaughter.
Yeah, that's not-
it was
not even-
bad. And within the first couple moments, he admits to misspeaking. He admits to having multiple facts wrong. Like he gets cornered like right away. Billy gets up, walks out because he had to go. Then tells him he can't put it out. After thinking about it, he puts out a trailer. People start talking. Wes does a video explaining what happened. Mark does a video explaining what happened. The same story. Billy Carson doesn't want
They
to.
did it together as well.
Yes, Billy Carson does not want this to come out. He is going to put together a debate in the background in person with a real Christian scholar, and that's going to be announced soon. Nothing gets announced. There is no debate. No one is going to sit down with him.
By the way, Wes Huff is a real Christian scholar.
Wes Huff
No, I
is
know that.
brilliant.
I know that.
Wes in person, and I will pay for Wes's flights and accommodations and food. If he's willing to run it back or run it back with a credible scholar, that would be the only way I wouldn't release this, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you already to Yandel, a.k.a. my man, Alan Torres, kicking things off with the super chat. We're going to get right into this today as we talk to the man who debated Billy Carson and really, honestly, exposed him for not knowing his stuff. And now what's happening in the aftermath of this debate that was recorded, but is no longer available online except for a few clips here and there. We're going to talk to Wes Huff. He's the one who did do the debate and did a great job, because I've seen a few clips as well as talked to people who saw it. So let us bring him on. I'm very excited about today's interview. Welcome to Street Apologist Live, Mr. Wes Huff. Wow. When did this debate happen?
This debate happened at the beginning of November. I got a message on my my Instagram DMs from Mark, and he said, "Hey, I'm a friend of Billy's. I've seen you interacted with him. He's going to be in my studio tomorrow. I know it's short notice. I don't know where you live, but I'd love to have you in and talk to him about some of the stuff he said about Christianity." So this happened, I think, the first week of November. So, yeah. Only a few short weeks ago.
How long was it online for, Wes?
So it was officially online for, I think, 6 hours. It went live not last Friday, but I believe it was the Friday before that. And there's some talk about, doing a follow-up, and Billy kiboshed that. He had no interest in that. So Mark put out a live video and a bunch of promotion stuff for it. And I went to sleep at night, woke up Saturday morning, and I couldn't find it.
No one can find it anymore. And you know what else people can't find? People can barely even find clips of it. Because now Mark, and shout out to Mark, he sounds like a really upstanding guy from everything I've heard. But Mark took down not just the debate, but his follow-up on it, where he did play some clips. And even had removed via copyright claims a few videos where other channels put up some clips from it. So here's what I want to say. Hey, if you're on the internet and you saw the Carson versus Huff debate and managed to screen record some of it, or perhaps, in God's providence, download the entire thing, please get me a link to that MP4 as soon as possible, and I will put stuff on the line, because a channel's a channel, and you can put stuff out and it can whatever, meaning I'm willing to okay, someone are saying they've got it downloaded. Are you saying to the person in the live show who's saying that, are you saying you have the entire debate, or are you just saying you have the clips? If you do, my email is vocabmalone@gmail.com. Please immediately create a Dropbox or something in the highest resolution you can. I want to review this thing, and if someone comes after me So be it. It is what it is. It won't be Wes's fault. It will be my doing because I will review it, and I'm very interested in that because the world needs to see this. Wes, why does the world need to see this debate, in your opinion?
You know what? Billy Carson has been very public for a long time. He's been on some of the biggest public platforms, the Joe Rogan podcast, the Patrick David podcast, and he's been allowed to say a lot of very at minimum silly things and at worst dangerous things in regards to Bible, Christianity, and these things are just demonstrably false. I mean, they're not hard to debunk. It's just a matter of the fact that he's been kind of given this free range to monologue for so long. And I started making response videos on social media to Billy Carson in the summer, and it kind of kicked off a bigger following of mine. And I realized, okay, this guy has an audience. People are taking note of this. And as I did more and more of that, I had more and more people reaching out saying, hey, I was really influenced by Billy Carson. I went down rabbit holes into New Thought, New Age, ancient astronaut theory, and it completely dismantled my faith. And so we're not just dealing with, I think, misinformation. I now get messages pretty frequently from people who said, Billy was out there talking about being a world-leading expert on biblical texts, and I'm not a world-leading expert on biblical texts, so I don't know what I don't know, and that affected me. And so I think, when I went into this interaction with Billy, I went in with thinking that I needed to be really gracious and kind because I wanted a follow-up in-person debate to happen, and I didn't want to give grants to Billy to say that I was rude or a bad faith actor.
But isn't that just because you're Canadian? You guys are nice, right?
Yeah, that could be it too, right?
Unless you're playing hockey.
You're not wrong.
Unless you're playing hockey.
I think, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you got it. I think though, you know what? If I could do this over again, I think I still would have been gracious, but I think I would have really pushed a lot harder on a few things because unbeknownst to me, we only had a limited amount of time. I actually thought we had longer. I knew Billy had to leave, but I thought we had a longer period of time. And myself and Mark had actually written out a list of things that I would have wanted to address, and I think we got to maybe a quarter of them. And so really wish that some sort of follow-up event could have happened because there were all sorts of things specifically about biblical Greek and Hebrew, about Sumerian that Billy just spouts off, that languages that I've studied, right? I've taught biblical Greek and Hebrew. I know a little bit of Sumerian, although I'm far from, being anything analogous, competent, or fluent in it. But I know enough to know that Billy doesn't know Sumerian. And so these comments I really wish I could have gotten to because there's just so much that Billy says that is just easily falsifiable, but people don't have access to the level of information that I fortunately and by God's grace have been given. And so it was, I think I'm happy with what we did talk about, but the conversation did get derailed at points. Billy likes to monologue. And so that was unfortunate, and which is why it would be good. And I'm still saying, hey, Billy, I'll meet you on your territory, on your grounds, and let's finish the conversation. Let's talk about it a little bit more.
We are talking to Wes Huff. He is finishing up his PhD work in New Testament at the University of Toronto, and we're on Street Apologist Live because I see some people asking, are we live? We are live. It's a live interview put together quickly today because some things fell into place by God's grace. And Wes debated Billy Carson, a well-known public speaker, an entrepreneur, and whatnot, who's been on Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet-David and a bunch of other places. And he often makes claims against Christianity, such as Jesus was never crucified. And on this debate, Wes was able to show that those things are not true. I have a little clip here from John Clash, and he played some of it. I'm going to try to play this and see if this works, and we could comment on this.
Something happened that I did not think I would ever see in my lifetime. Billy Carson, aka William T. Carlson, had a debate about Christianity with somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. He sat down with Wesley Huff. Just some of Wesley's credentials. He has a bachelor's in sociology from New York University, a master's of theological studies from Tyndale University, and is currently doing a PhD in New Testament at the University of Toronto's Wycliffe College. So kudos to you, Billy, for sitting down with somebody of this caliber. By the way, guys, if you're not following Wesley Huff's channel, I will leave the link in my description. I'll tag him on social media, and you need to go follow him.
Look at that, Wes. You're getting lots of love today. Now, he basically did your bio and stuff for you, which is pretty cool. So John Clash had another video with some clips, but that video has been taken down. So that's actually not the one with the clips, but I do believe I also have one that has clips in it. I'm hoping it's this one right here because I want people to actually see a little bit of what we're talking about here.
Billy Carson and Wesley Huff. Yeah. Get going.
All right, brother.
Well, 2 weeks ago, my good man Billy Carson sat right here next to me in person, and we pulled online from Canada Wesley Huff, and we had a healthy conversation and debate about some of our different beliefs.
You actually believe that the majority of Christians really believe that God is not masculine, that God is has both aspects?
It's irrelevant what the majority of Christians believe.
Road.
What historical biblical Christianity articulates is what they should believe.
I had a follow-up from him immediately after the show, basically asking me not to air the show. I said, who's someone that could be able to have a good debate and has knowledge about all the stuff that Billy has knowledge of? And both pointed to this guy, Wesley.
So I'm staking my entire life on the person of Jesus. And where do I find the information about Jesus? I find that in the Bible. And if I can't trust the Bible, I really have no reason to put my hope and trust in Jesus.
And I also said someone that is polite, respectful. Yes, we're going to be honest. Yes, there might be some healthy conflict, but in a respectful way.
Okay. What was that part, Wes, about God, male and female?
Yeah, so that was one of the times when got into kind of a rabbit trail conversation. I had pinned Billy down on the fact he was claiming that the Old Testament, particularly Genesis chapter 1, was copied from a bunch of different texts, the Enuma Elish and the Atrahasis, these ancient Near Eastern, Sumerian, Babylonian documents. And I'd really pinned him down on the fact that that wasn't the case whatsoever. In fact, the opposite is true. And so he, I think, realized, oh, this isn't going well, and really capitalized on the fact that I called God he. And so then started on a rant about the fact that, isn't it convenient that Christianity has a male God and that's been used to subjugate women? And so I just simply said, doesn't have a male God. Yes, he uses the male, in Scripture, incarnate in Jesus Christ as a male, but we don't believe ontologically that God is male, and
Right.
Christianity has never claimed that.
So Billy was saying
No
that,
worries.
that these things were borrowed from other ancient Near Eastern myths. And I guess that happened partially with, he was saying, with Genesis. And you asked him what were the similarities with Genesis as well that happened? What happened there?
Yeah, he said, this is copied from the Enuma Elish. I said, can you summarize the creation story in the Enuma Elish? And to his credit, he did a decent job. Wasn't perfect, but he did a decent job. And I kind of did that on purpose. I wanted to make sure that in his own words, he was describing exactly what happens in the Babylonian creation story, because it is the farthest thing from Genesis chapter 1 and 2 that you could ever hear. And so he kind of dug his own grave there and articulated, this giant battle of the gods who are fighting, and there's multiple gods, and that the world is, and humanity is end up being made from the remains of a dead god. And so he kind of finishes this monologue. I actually had to cut him off because he kept going, and I was like, okay, we've gone too far from the original question. And I said, what is copied? Because he said word for word, the Enuma Elish is copied into Genesis 1. I said, okay, well, you just summarized that for me. It doesn't sound anything like Genesis chapter 1. What is the word for word? And his answer was, they both have separating the waters from the waters. And then there was this kind of pause. And I said, okay, that's pretty general for someone claiming that something's been plagiarized from another document. In fact, it's so general that it's almost inconsequential. And so I think he realized, okay, I'm stuck here. I've gone down the garden path and allowed myself to make a claim that I can't back up. And so that's when he started capitalizing on, well, you call God he. Isn't it convenient that Christianity is a male God? And so once again, he tried to change the subject to kind of corner me. And unfortunately, Billy Carson is not hugely well versed on these things. So when I said, Christianity doesn't believe in a male God, although we believe Jesus was male, we don't believe in his nature that God is male, that the two that God creates humanity in his image, both male and female, and that doesn't mean that God is a male or a female. And so he kind of realized that that wasn't a good pivot either. So that was the particular clip that Mark used in the trailer. In that when he realized that he'd been kind of caught on that one, he said, "Well, do you really think that the majority of Christians believe that God isn't a male?" And I just said, what the majority of Christians believe is irrelevant. They could believe that, the majority of Christians, I'm sure, believe all sorts of things that would not be 100% accurate to historic biblical Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah, a few connection problems. Wes is in Canada. I apologize for those, but live chat, let's get you to sound off. What do you guys think? And I'm looking here at the live chat. I know that you're coming in and out a little bit. D New, shout out to one of the best moderators in the business. She says, "We need details, Wes. LOL, it's okay. We won't tell Billy. You told us." What are some other, you think, pertinent details? In fact, Wes, so I've seen the Genesis clip. I've seen the Sinaiticus clip. Are there things that haven't come out or been talked about that you could tell us that would be exclusive right here that you also think would maybe be relevant, that people, another part of the debate, maybe people want to see?
That's a good question. I don't think so. We ended up talking about, Billy tried to bring in the conversation of slavery and the oppression that had happened because of certain things within the Bible. That was near the end, and it kind of got on a rabbit trail because at that point, Mark is a great guy. He's a younger Christian, and so I think
a few connection problems. I'm sure he'll be back with us. Art, my main man from Apologia Center, says, "I'm going to message PBD and tell him what he is up to because Carson said that he would debate anyone." And yeah, in fact, I think he even said that on PBD's podcast. Jay Fry says, "Oh, Billy is indwelt with a smarty pants." I guess that's a devil emoji. "Seen his kind before, avoid him like the plague." Well, maybe, but I don't want to avoid playing clips of the debate, Jay. But I know you're not saying that. But Jay, thank you for the super chat as well. Okay, so you're saying that at a certain point, Wes, he got off into, well, what about slavery in the Bible? What about, instead of just stealing the facts? Okay, how did that go? Yeah, like I said, few connection problems. You know how these things go sometimes. But everybody, thank you so much for being patient. I do appreciate that. But how did that part go?
I apologize for that.
That's all right. We both are having our issues, I guess. But how did that go, the rabbit trail at the end?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I was cut off quite a few times in that conversation. It's something that I think Mark also kind of struggled on in terms of, so he kind of started taking Billy's side and trying to articulate something there. I think partially also because I think he just wanted to not make it look as bad as it was looking on Billy's side, and we kind of come to his defense and try to even the playing field a little bit more. I don't know. I don't think that worked in that way. Nonetheless, I think I also kind of articulated, here's some of the scholarship. You can look up guys like Tom Holland in his work Dominion, which talks about slavery. He's not a Christian guy. You can look up guys like Paul Copan. He talks about the genocide in the Old Testament and some of that stuff. You can look up Wright on the Old Testament ethics and how slavery played into that. And that slavery in the Bible is a complicated subject, but in some ways we're not dealing with the same thing as what we're dealing with chattel slavery and any accusation of people who want to pick up an AK-47 in the name of Jesus, or pick up a sword in the name of Jesus, or want to try to sell other image bearers of God in the name of Jesus. Well, this is obviously an abuse, and so you don't judge Christianity based on its abuses. You judge it on what it actually claims. And so I mentioned that. I mentioned at one point, I said, of course there are going to be abuses, and Christianity is very transparent about that. I mentioned my friend John Dixon, who has a book called Bullies and Saints, where he goes through some of that history and says, of course there are bad examples of Christians acting poorly. That's because we're sinful human beings, and that's why we all need Jesus. And so I said, when I was growing up, I grew up as a missionary kid in the Middle East, and there was a country when I was growing up in the Middle East called the Democratic Republic of Iraq. And I simply said, don't judge democracy based on Saddam Hussein. It's not going to work. It's a bad example. And so, I think I played that well, even though it kind of went way off base on what I wanted to talk about or what we should have been talking about, which was too bad. We really should have centered on some of the more clear claims that Billy has made in regard to Christianity in the Bible. And I would have liked that, but that's where the conversation went. And unfortunately, that's kind of where it ended, because Billy got up and left very shortly after that. So we weren't able to flesh out some of those ideas.
Those other questions he started bringing up, I mean, it sounds like what I've seen in a lot of these types of debates before, essentially trying to throw out a rescue device to himself, where he's obviously caught on the facts, and so he wants to appeal to audience's emotional sensibilities and basically leave a discussion of the facts, because he had been 100% hamstrung on those. And so it's like, well, what about this? What about that? And I think it's an obvious tactic there, as well as even saying, when you got him on the fact that these aren't some naked parallels between other A&E literature and their origin stories, they're not even really creation stories, but they're origin stories. When he got caught on that, he changes it to, well, what do you think most Christians really believe about God? Well, that's a different issue. And I think he knows all that. I think, because I've seen these debate tactics. Yeah. He's the major league version of sort of the AAA version of what I deal with. That's an American baseball reference. I know you have the Blue Jays, but I don't know how much you know about the farm system there and then baseball. And within that being said, I deal with these guys on House of Consciousness. Well, to be fair, guys and gals, D-New deals with them too. My man BK does. And you get a lot of that similar kind of stuff. Now, it looks like some people saw the debate and they had some comments that they wanted to add. For example, D-New said that Wes was super gracious. So that's a testament to your kindness and charity, Wes. I think that's a good thing. And then she was talking about the part in relationship to Genesis, and says Wes handled him on that part, and Billy had nothing to say in response. You did mention there was a moment of silence in that part. I think the moment of silence, Wes, was because his argument had just died. I think that's why there was a moment of silence after that, because his argument had just experienced a funeral.
Yeah, what's interesting is I had someone reach out to me who used to be part of Billy's media team, who said he had watched the debate, and he said, hey, I've never seen Billy, his demeanor change that quickly. That Billy's always very confident, and I think his confidence is in lieu of his actual competence. But he's always very confident. He's always very, bang, bang, bang with the facts, like quote unquote facts, right? He's throwing all these words out, and it was very clear very quickly. And you could see it, I think, partway through the conversation, Billy's demeanor changed because he realized, I can't get away with throwing out these things. Because Mark didn't know what Codex Sinaiticus was. But not only did I know what it is, I mean, I work with it on a weekly, if not daily basis. Like, I'm very familiar. In fact, my academic work, I've done things like I've not only worked with Codex Sinaiticus, but I've measured the margins and I have measured the spaces between the words because I deal with scribal features and reader's aids in ancient manuscripts. And so I am like as familiar with these texts as I possibly can be. And so I think he realized pretty quickly, I can't get away with throwing out these terms. And so I think you're exactly right, Vocab, that he started to try to switch. And actually, one area that I think was very pertinent to the debate was I really pinned him down on saying, what methodology are you using in order to come up with your sources? Because everything you're throwing out is either incorrectly used or you're relying on known published forgeries. And so I'm just curious, what method are you using to try to discern sources? And I mean, I kind of wondered, and I think it's the way that it played out, is that Billy has not actually done any formal training in historiography. And so he doesn't even know what I mean when I say, what is your methodological approach? Because I don't think he has one. I don't think he understands what a historical approach to deem A as reliable and B not reliable is. I don't think he understands how historians use probability in these things. And so I was really trying to pin him down, and I think I did in saying, okay, you're throwing out all these things, talking about all these sources from ancient tribes, the Dogon tribe, that they have this information. How are you using proper sources and proper methods to ascertain whether something is actually reliable? Because we do that in history. We do that with written and oral sources. There are ways to figure out whether an oral source is actually communicating reliably. How are you using that? Because you seem to throw out the biblical documents as unreliable, and yet you're using the Gospel of the Holy 12 and the Gospel of Barnabas and the Gospel of Jesus' wife. Why those and not the earlier eyewitness testimony that every other historian is saying, these are, if we're going to look at the historical Jesus, this is what we look at. Why are you doing that? And I think what that reveals is that he doesn't know. He's choosing his sources based on his preconceived bias.
Yeah, he's going fishing.
Agree with him, and so that's what he's using.
He's going fishing.
Yeah, which isn't history. That's not how you do history.
Yeah, it's not proper historiography. I pull up his booking page where it's got his bio, and it says Carson's academic pursuits. This is his bio on his booking page, mn2s.com. Carson's academic pursuits further enhance his credibility. Not anymore. Sorry, that's just my interjection. I was editorializing there. He has earned a certificate of science and neuroscience from MIT. Interesting certificate. First of all, I think we should work to verify to see if that's true. There are ways to verify these things. And also a certificate, schools that do give out certificates, which I'm surprised a school like MIT would, I don't know. They're usually less stringent than even like a bachelor's. It'll be like a 15 or 30 hour max or something like that. I don't know. I'm curious about this. A certificate of science in neuroscience from MIT. This is, not an easy school to do anything at. And listen to this, Wes. A certificate in ancient civilization from Harvard University.
Yeah, I mean, certificates aren't exactly seen as credible in terms of accolades. Like you said, a bachelor's degree would be the minimum. That would be kind of the base, bare bones thing that you'd be looking for. A master's would kind of then earn a little bit more of a credibility. But to be totally honest, so many masters are people are getting master's degrees out there, and even PhDs. Not all PhDs are created equal, so the program, the institution, really matter in that regard. So, if he did do those certificates, I mean, especially the one from Harvard, Harvard should probably look into who's teaching those classes, how they're giving them out, because if let's give Billy the benefit of the doubt. Let's say he did that. It's in ancient civilizations. He clearly did not learn anything from taking that certificate, because
point.
I see no reasonable grounds to show that he actually has any training in how you would actually go about looking at ancient civilizations.
Thanks for dissing me and my poor measly master's degree. Just kidding. I'm just teasing. No,
No, masters are great.
I'm just teasing. I'm working on being more one day. But with those certificate programs that do exist, now I don't know about MIT and Harvard and Billy Carson, but to the ones that do exist, my assessment of them is basically it's like, hey, we know you can't get a bachelor's degree here for whatever reason, but if you take a couple classes, don't you want to at least show that you took some classes here? We'll give you a certificate. And it says you took a couple classes with us, but you didn't earn an actual degree, but you did earn the certificate because you took a couple classes. That's my general understanding. Now, I'd be curious to look more into this because I have a feeling there's more smoke to be discovered in the Carson situation. And whenever there's more smoke, there's more fire. And I intend to fan the flames, baby. That's my plan. So today on Street Apologist Live.
You know what, though?
Yeah.
You know what I'll say to that? Is that, in some sense, credentialism is great and it's important. And I think we need to capitalize on people who actually have done the groundwork and legwork of doing these degrees. I mean, I had to learn 4 languages in order to just kind of stay in my program. There's something to that. But I am less interested in whether you have letters behind your name or degrees on your wall as to if you're actually competent. Some of the best people I know who I actually consult on some things has to do less with their degrees and more of the fact that they have shown credibility to actually understand the content of what's going on. I mean, I have a friend who has a PhD in biology, but I think he could very easily do a graduate level presentation, teach a graduate level class on church history and patristics. He's that knowledgeable in that, even though he hasn't necessarily gone to an institution, got a degree in it. So in one sense, I think the fact that Billy only has certificates, that should be factored in and, kind of seen with a kind of critical inquisitive eye. At the same time, his public contents has spoken volumes more than any degrees he would ever have gotten about his actual knowledge and competency in this kind of field and discipline. So not to be accused of, being an elitist and credentialist. I think those things are important. I think, people to a certain degree should have those. But if you're able to hold your own in understanding how some of these things operate, that goes just as far with me in terms of being a credible source.
Yeah. Really, do you kind of know what you're talking about? Do you know? Do you understand? Because it is true. Sometimes you can have lots of degrees, more degrees than a thermometer, as the old folks say. And doesn't necessarily mean you're always competent, but it means you had to do a pretty decent job of faking it to get there, because it takes a lot of work to get a real degree. Now, Check this out. We've got a couple of comments I think you might find interesting. We have Loaves of Bread says that is Wes saying that he knew only days before debating? Billy Carson just restates false claims from debunked books. So Loaves of Bread wants to know, this is a super chat, a little bit more about the background. You found out, I think, 24 hours, less than 24 hours about this debate is my understanding. We'll let you answer that when you come back in. You knew less than 24 hours about this debate, right? It was like a last minute thing.
Yeah, I had less than 24 hours notice that I would be interacting with Billy. That's correct. I'd been addressing some of his arguments on, response videos on some stuff I put out on YouTube and social media for months leading up to that. But in no way did I actually think I would have the chance to talk with Billy in person, hypothetically on digitally. So that wasn't even on my radar. The fact that Mark reached out, that he said this was an opportunity, I think was actually a God orchestrated thing.
Yeah.
But I saw the message at about noon on Thursday, and I believe it was, Friday at 1:00 that we actually jumped on the call.
Wow. Well, you did a great job, but one of those things of stay ready so you ain't got to get ready. You stay ready for this type of thing, and you do beautiful work. We have reached our super chat goal, and that means I've got to do what I said, which is tell everyone Happy Thanksgiving when we hit the super chat goal, which we have hit today. I told everyone that I would tell them Happy Thanksgiving, and so I'm going to say it one more time just because you guys have now went one over. Happy Thanksgiving. Seriously, thank you guys very much.
Or as we call it in Canada, Thursday.
Yeah, that's the old joke the Canadians make. But don't you guys celebrate things like Bacon Day or something, and Maple Day? Don't you guys have those kind of holidays? I'm just kidding.
Not that I know of.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I know you guys are real keen to celebrate Justin Trudeau's birthday, though. It's because he's such a gift to your country and to the world that I know that's a big celebration there. Yeah.
Listen, don't make me leave this call.
Okay. We also have Eldro. You don't have to comment on this, but he says the debate moderator basically ruined what could have been an amazing debate. Dude couldn't stop interrupting. Now, you don't have to comment, but Eldro, I'm going to watch it. I think Mark is a guy that's a loyal guy from what I can tell, and, they had a personal relationship, and I think he just wanted to make it more balanced and almost help out his friend because he himself is a believer. So I believe really, from what I can tell, Mark really has good intentions, and I just think Mark was probably really caught off guard by this whole thing. That's what it seems like. But that Eldro did see the debate. That's what he said.
Yeah, I think, this was a new experience for Mark. I don't think he had been in the position of a moderator before.
Right.
And so he did jump in a few times, which I think he might have derailed the conversation. But I think in his mind, he was trying to create an even playing field and maybe also make a comment here or there. But yeah.
Well, I think I have a clip of this. This is a brief clip. I believe this is the Sinaiticus part here, Wes.
Questionable interests.
The Codex Sinaiticus in particular is just a Greek, it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. When you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there, I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So I think my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers or listeners or whatever?
I'm looking for it right now to make sure I have the right the version that I'm looking at. Found the text where the Gospel of Barnabas.
I don't think it'd be a good idea, right? The book is titled
That's a pretty big part. So that's kind of like a big money part. And that was right in the beginning of the debate, correct?
Off the bat, and I think that. And even I think Billy realized he messed up by saying he misspoke, because he has said that exact same thing, that the gospel, or that the Sinai Bible or Codex Sinaiticus doesn't have the crucifixion, or sometimes he said it denies the crucifixion. Both things are false. But I've heard him say that on the Flagrant podcast, on the Patrick Bet-David podcast. I don't know whether he mentioned it on Joe Rogan, but there have just been so many, and even just videos on his own channel. So for him to say, oh, oops, I actually misspoke, what that means is that, has he been misspeaking this whole time? On all these.
Apparently, right? In that clip I just played, this is part of the debate that is no longer available online. You can't watch it anywhere. But that's part of the debate that lasted about an hour. And in his public speaking, Billy Carson has went around saying that the Sinai Bible does not have the crucifixion of Jesus in it. Well, first of all, there is no such thing as the Sinai Bible. There is Codex Sinaiticus, which apparently that's what he was talking about. And Wes Wes has a facsimile of it. Did you actually show him the facsimile, or did you just hold up a copy, or what did you do as far as that of Codex Sinaiticus, where obviously it does have the crucifixion? In fact, it has a crucifixion at least 4 times in it, as far as the scene being described.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. What did you do as far as that? Those are like isn't that set like $300? That Codex Sinaiticus, I think it's like $300. I saw it at ETS recently.
Yeah, so I have a facsimile of just the New Testament.
Okay.
So I was gifted that a number of years ago.
Wow.
And so I have just the New Testament. Actually, I can show you.
That's a blessing, by the way. So, guys, the way it works is obviously not everyone can go and physically handle some of the most important biblical manuscripts. It's a very highly prized thing to be able to do, and you got to be careful with these things, even if you are someone who's a curator of these manuscripts. So a way that in the new era we're able to really get around that is actually have basically high quality, high res pictures, not just online, but in some cases with some of them in books. So can you show the facsimile that you have of Codex Sinaiticus and maybe explain its importance?
Yeah, so Codex Sinaiticus is one of a few what we would think of as our earliest complete Bibles. So this is Codex Sinaiticus. I used this in grad school because I did a bunch of text critical work on Codex Sinaiticus. I also have a facsimile that a mentor of mine got done that is Codex Vaticanus. So this is actually in the Vatican.
So you've got
personal
both
collection.
You basically have both of the oldest Bibles there.
Yeah, I have Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus. The other ones that would be kind of in the same vein of thinking of a Bible as, you know, a cover-to-cover Genesis to Revelation copy would be Alexandrinus and Washingtonianus. Those are kind of the 4. So the thinking is that right after Constantine decriminalized Christianity and, you know, the Council of Nicaea was called and there were some theological debates that happened, we had the story of Constantine commissioning Bibles to be produced to be spread within the Christian communities. And this was kind of a peace offering related to the fact that his predecessor, Diocletian, had done a pretty thorough job at destroying Christian documents. And Constantine, even before his conversion, was very much in the vein of trying to create a sense of peace. Didn't just decriminalize Christianity. He made an edict of tolerance towards a whole bunch of religions that kind of had been squashed by some of the Roman emperors previous to him. And so we don't know for a fact that Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, Alexandrinus, Washingtonianus, these manuscripts were part of this group that Constantine had commissioned. But based on the fact that they are these ginormous writing projects, I mean, Codex Sinaiticus could have taken anywhere between 260 and 360 sheep to make. So like this was not a cheap document. So it is, but they're very famous, right? So both Vaticanus and Sinaiticus are probably our oldest complete copies of what we would think of as a Bible. Now I have multiple facsimiles of all sorts of documents that even predate that. I have P45 and P46, which are collections of both the Pauline epistles and Acts from the 2nd century. I also have P66 in my library, which is one of our earliest near complete copies of Gospel of John from the end of the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd centuries. But these are documents that I use in my academic work. So they're not just like museum pieces for me. I'm pulling them out. I'm pulling them off my shelves. I'm pretty intimately aware of not only their contents, but what they are. And so... and actually, you can go on, I would recommend that people do this. If you go to codexsinaiticus.org, the British Library has actually digitized the entire manuscript. So one of the things is that when people like Billy say, oh, well, you know, something like the Sinai Bible, Codex Sinaiticus, it says this or it doesn't say this, go fact check them. Go to codexsinaiticus.org, and you should be able to look up the book and even the chapter, and it'll show you. It'll have a picture of the page. It'll have a translation and then the Greek transcription on the side. Like a lot of these things have been digitized. CSNTM, the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts, they've digitized a lot of Greek manuscripts from all over the world. So these are things that we can check. You know, these are things that Yes, people like myself are looking them up. I mean, I was last night staying up late and writing a bunch of a textual analysis of a handful of manuscripts that I've been given access to as part of my doctoral work. But a lot of these things are available, and so you shouldn't let people get away with saying silly things like Codex Sinaiticus doesn't have the crucifixion when you can just for yourself go online and look them up.
And that's true about Sinaiticus. Vaticanus people is also online. I know it's on my phone, so you can't see it great. But if you just search Codex Vaticanus, it's online. Sometimes people hear Vatican, and Protestants especially get scared. Oh, some secret manuscript. No, it's online. You can see it right here. You can look at it right there. And yeah, the Center for the Dan Wallace's work is amazing with the high res photography. This stuff is available. And so hypothetically, even if some of it gets destroyed or deteriorates farther, we would actually still have access to it. It's a beautiful thing. Totally. So you brought this out, and he had to say, well, I misspoke. Sinaiticus is not missing Jesus' crucifixion.
I mean, what else is he going to say?
But I saw him grab his phone.
I mean, I'm literally holding it in my hand.
Yeah, so I saw him grab his phone. I don't know if you saw when you were speaking. He grabs his phone, and I could just see Billy Carson's Google search. Does Sinaiticus contain Jesus' crucifixion? He had to fact check himself on the spot, and then he's like, now he said it was Barnabas. Maybe he was one of the last questions, and then I want to look at a few live chat things here because I know we said we'd end around this time. Can you tell us a little about Barnabas and its relationship to the debate contents that you had with Billy Carson on Mark Menard's channel recently? Barnabas.
Yeah, so he brought up the Gospel of Barnabas. They said specifically in the conversation, let's confuse that with either the Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are two second-century writings that have, they're apocryphal in the sense that they're not part of the Bible. They were, rejected by the early church as being scriptural. The Barnabas that is associated with those is not the Barnabas in any type of historical way, going back to the Barnabas who's the traveling companion of Paul. Nonetheless, you do have this document called the Epistle of Barnabas, and it actually comes from the late Middle Ages, and we know this because it only exists. It has no mention of itself prior to this time. It was almost certainly written by Muslims who were living in Spain. We have two copies of it. I've actually worked with the manuscripts. One is in medieval Italian, the other is in medieval Spanish. And there are all sorts of ways we can look at the Gospel of Barnabas. Internally, it had some problems.
So, guys, what we're talking about now is Barnabas. But when you say Barnabas, you got to specify which Barnabas do you mean? Because there's Epistle of Barnabas, Acts of Barnabas, and then Gospel of Barnabas. Two are pseudepigrapha. They are not authentically written by Barnabas or someone who directly knew him because of the later date. One, though, is even worse of a forgery because it's done in the Middle Ages. It's not even in, say, Greek or one of those languages that should be in, if that makes sense. Instead, we got it in medieval Italian, medieval Spanish. And it's very popular even to this day amongst a lot of Muslims. You actually sometimes see them reading it, as I have on occasion at my day job. And he's talking about that. That is the document that Billy went to say, actually, I meant this document. And he was talking about what document again, Wes, there? Because you got cut off in the middle. He was talking about what document again?
Sorry, he was talking about the Gospel of Barnabas, which, like I mentioned, is in the late Middle Ages. It has no historical provenance to having anything reliable to the either the historical Barnabas or even really coming from anything other than the Middle Ages. It paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. So it obviously has to come after that, right? Yeah. In chapters 20, 21, it has Jesus sailing to Nazareth and being welcomed by the seamen of that town. But Nazareth is landlocked. You're not sailing to Nazareth at any time. So it's like these internal details kind of reveal, okay, whoever's writing this, they don't know what they're talking about. And not only do they not know what they're talking about, but they're disqualifying themselves from actual any historical credibility. So it wouldn't take long I mean, if you looked at the Gospel of Barnabas and said, okay, yes, this is a document that denies Jesus' crucifixion. No doubt about that. Okay, well, based on that, now let's look at its content. Okay, right off the bat, the Gospel of Barnabas. Jesus is called the Christ, but it denies that he's the Messiah. Okay, well, that's a problem because those are the same word. So whoever's reading this doesn't know that there's the same word.
Yeah.
In chapter 3, we're told that Herod and Pilate both ruled Judea in the time of Jesus' birth. Well, Herod, yes, Pilate's not going to be ruling until Jesus' death. And so, it's just these kind of things. It doesn't take long to looking at this content and then saying, okay, well, do these things add up? Does this have any historical reliability? Well, no. Okay, externally, 2 copies are late. They're not in an ancient language. They're in a medieval language. We don't have any kind of provenance to them being copied of anything earlier. Then internally, you have all these mistakes about geography of Israel, like bad mistakes, not just like minor mistakes. Jesus is going back and forth from Mount Sinai to Jerusalem. Those aren't those places. Like I said, sailing to Nazareth, that doesn't make any sense. And then quoting Dante's Inferno is kind of the last nail in the coffin. So using those, and this is what I was trying to pin them on, right? Methodology. How do we come up with the reliability or the spuriousness of source? There are ways that we go through this. And if we're relying on the Gospel of Barnabas and not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it really revealed that we probably have an ideological motivation to do so.
Yep. And so what is the similarity, everybody, between Billy Carson and the Gospel of Barnabas? What is the similarity there? Neither have any historical validity. So Triune Charlie watched it. He says that you were patient in the way Mark kept cutting him off and was, okay, yeah. And people apparently commend you not just on your information in the debate, but how you handled yourself. So praise God, keep on doing what you're doing. Listen, I'm going to run through some of these other comments in the live chat, but I'll let you go because I said about an hour. I appreciate your patience. Some tech difficulties. I'll go back and edit a few of them out of the live stream, but you can't edit all the little quirks and hiccups out, but it'll be a little smoother and play back a little bit. But thank you. I hope to have you on again or talk to you again. You're doing great work. And I love the fact that you're taking what's happening in academia and figuring out a way to apply it to social media. And look, you never know what opportunities will present themselves. And so praise God that you were willing to be the man who stood in the gap in that way. So thank you. And I'll let you know if these links I got are to the debates, because maybe you want to watch your own debate. Who knows? Because right now you can't watch your own debate, man. But I might be able to help you with that. I'll let you know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Vocab. I mean, I've been a fan of your work going back quite a few years now. So it's cool to, years down the road, meet up and connect on these kind of things. I think these are important topics, right? Whether we're dealing with Black Hebrew Israelites like you do, or this kind of stuff, or Muslims, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, skeptics, atheists, it's a matter of truth. And it's not a matter of dunking on these guys. It's a matter of, okay, people need Jesus.
Amen.
And these people are, not everybody is a wolf in sheep's clothing, but I think some of them are. And so, like a friend of mine likes to say, taking out the trash is necessary sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And so I appreciate you having me on.
That's what I have to tell my son, too. Sometimes it's necessary, especially maybe the day after Thanksgiving, taking out the trash. But no, great point, because if you go around telling people Jesus didn't die on the cross in history, I'm not saying Billy per se, this is his intention, but it ends up having a very nefarious effect. It's what Satan would want in a way. It's demonic, because then the means by which the one true God has provided for men and women to have their sins paid for is now taken out of the equation. But the thing is, isn't it beautiful to know that that's not true? The Gospels are. So thank you so much. Appreciate you, brother. God bless. Let's go through some of these comments, ladies and gentlemen. I'll talk to you again, Wes. Okay. You guys have been really patient through thick and through thin here in the live chat. Thank you for reaching our super chat goal. Don't keep them stopping. But I do want to prioritize super chats. So even though this isn't on topic, Breads G says, what's the best verse to annihilate BHI? Just had a street fight with one a week. Okay. Also, has Wes Huff been to a Diddy party? What a strange question. Don't know why you asked that. but I'll briefly say it's not the best verse. The best book in the Bible is the book of Galatians. Read it, and maybe you should also learn to ask better questions, because the end of this ain't no good. And I don't encourage street fights with Hebrew Israelites unless you mean it metaphorically. My goodness. Okay, so Robin says, I cannot find that debate. Shaking my head, wish I can see it thou, though, LOL. Yes, us too. So Robin, what we're trying to do here on the program is to apply some pressure to people that have it, and hopefully, by God's grace, Mark will really want truth to win. I perceive he's a man of integrity, and he'll have to kind of just say, look, I know, Billy, you're trying to intimidate me, and I know you don't want this out, but the fact is, I told the audience this would happen, and I don't want to do your dirty work for you anymore. I'm not going to be removing this to protect you, because truth needs to win out. And I pray that he's willing to do that and face the consequences come what may. And so, Brother Mark, I do hope that that's what you do. Old School Saint made a comment when we were talking about certificates earlier, says that a certificate is one step above an honorary degree. That's basically true, because in an honorary degree, you don't do the work. Although I'm okay with honorary degrees, as long as people understand they're honorary. You know, I get the idea behind them. In the certificate, you actually are doing, some kind of work, of course, right? Shout out to Yafet Harris for the super chat as well. Thank you very much. And Loaves of Bread says, Billy Carson randomly talks about Syriac and Aramaic interchangeably. I'll take your word on that. I do not know his work as much, his content. I haven't watched a lot of it. I know BK has done some stuff, and he's done great work. Everyone subscribed to BK Apologist, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was true. And Apostate of Allah, thank you for the super chat, Apostate of Allah. And she says, I really want to watch that debate. Well, I'm with you on that. I want you to be able to watch it as well as other people. And we're going to try to work on that, because people told me that they got it, and they sent me the link during the show. Free Thinkers Podcast says, show the debate. That's the whole point. We can't show it just yet because it has been taken off the internet, and Billy Carson is doing a cover-up game. Actually, on this show, we did not get into a lot of the dirty details. There are legal issues being threatened and a number of other issues that I'm not going to talk about now, but I will say that on Ruslan's podcast, he brought some of them up. But actually, what he did is he bleeped some of the information out. So if you watch me recently on Ruslan's podcast, you'll see that he is discussing some of this, but there's some parts in there where he beeps it out. What he's beeping out is actually some of those other details. Very, very, very interesting and troubling as well. Someone named Constantine says, if you are talking about Anunnaki and Nibiru, I am not taking you seriously. That's a good point, and I do agree. Fortunately, a lot of the world doesn't. But you bringing that up is important, because what that makes me think is that Billy Carson has read a lot of Dr. Malachi Z. York's work, or heard a lot of his lectures and speeches. Carson is the closest thing I can find to a modern-day proponent on the public media stage or platform who follows Nuwabianism. I don't know if that's properly true, but it certainly seems like it. He's sort of poised to take Polite's place in the sense of the way he's approaching things, except he's been on platforms Polite could never have imagined, with the LA comedians and podcaster scene that, Trump himself was going around doing. So very, very interesting. New Testament theologist Nick says Murray Vassar at Wesley Seminary is an expert on slavery in the NT. I had him on my channel, Vocab. I'd love to see that. And it was great to see you at ETS, my friend. It really was. And I'd be looking forward to seeing that. DA asked, did it feel like Mark was stepping in to save his homie? It seems like that was the case from everything I've heard. I haven't been able to watch it yet, but I guess what I want to say is that, their friendship might be in jeopardy. It is what it is. And if you don't know, everybody, what we're talking about, we're talking about Billy Carson. And as Dinu accurately describes him, a critic of Christianity in the Bible, regular talking points that typically come from the conscious community, but he has a more mainstream platform. That's a perfect description. She's absolutely right. And Eldro also seconded the idea of the challenge with the moderator jumping in. And again, I think he was just trying to save his friend. I think that was what was happening. Shout out again to Yondell, not just for today's super chat, for some of the Thanksgiving and birthday support you sent me, brother. I am greatly appreciated to you, Alan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Brock is also familiar with Billy Carson and mentions some comments about that as well as loaves of bread. So a number of the audience do know who he is and are familiar with his work. Listen, this is not going to be the last time I deal with this issue. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on. BK's right. Look at the comment on the stream. There's a lot going on where, recently I just sat down with Sakari and we did a talk there in San Diego on Trinity, New Covenant, Paul's authority, all kinds of important stuff. I'm still in the midst of editing and dropping those videos. And so I'm really kind of caught up in that. I'm trying to wind that up because I want to do some stuff with more on this issue. And so I'm working on doing that. And I hope that we can get into this again, especially when I look and see this debate myself. Confessing Jesus Christ says, I follow Billy Carson just as someone ridiculous to give ideas to refute. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably do that. Nuck says a lot of people on YouTube have debunked dude. Yeah, that may be true, but the thing is never face-to-face in this way, so that's important. Yep, good point, D. New. You're exactly right. And also good point, Jeremy. Sometimes I put the comments on the screen, don't necessarily read them all. And, you're coming out to Phoenix in March? Yeah, I'm down for both of those things. And when you say catch a brew, do you mean like dark beer, or do you mean like catch a brew on 19th Avenue in Camelback and talk to them about the New Testament? But Jimmy also says he sent me this debate, and so I'm going to look at it. I believe BK and True ID, Adam Coleman, are probably going to do some follow-up on this as well, because we are not done talking about this. This is very important information, and we do not want to let this issue go away or die. We want to push it and press it. And everyone, if you want to watch some great videos of someone debunking this, check out my man BK Apologist. He's got a number of videos. In fact, he has a Billy Carson playlist, so subscribe to him. Let me see if I can play one more clip here, at least.
The modern Greek text that we develop translations from. When you say that it denies the crucifixion, or that the crucifixion isn't there, I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So I think my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So actually,
the version that I'm looking at. Found the text where I was referencing. Actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
I don't think we.
He said, I found the text I was referencing. Actually, it was the Gospel of Barnabas. Shocking. I mean, bro, that's a career ender. Shout out to Jeremy for the super chat. I put your comment on the screen, as well as Pastor Tanks. Everyone, check out Pastor Tanks' apologetic works. He's had some recent dust-ups with Captain Tazariak, and is a great example of a pastor and apologist. And there's one clip I have not played yet from this brother's channel, and shout out to John Clash for also covering this. Shout out to Ruslan. Shout out to Mike Jones. He's done some follow-up work. And here's the last clip I want to play, I believe, that I am going to play today.
The biblical message regarding Jesus.
The book of Barnabas, which Billy has highly studied. We'll play the clip.
They discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary, which, according to some scholars, is a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to, the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified.
This whole book of Jesus' wife, this was quickly shown to be a forgery.
Real quick, the man talking is, I don't know his name, but his show is the Vegapod. And he actually covered this as well, looking at issues through a biblical lens. He does some good work. Whoever you are, Vegapod, I don't know your name, brother, but shout out to you. And I see that he does some good apologetics work. as well as covering this, and he put the clips up, and then this is his voice on that you're going to hear.
Shown to be a forgery. The guy who discovered it is thought to be the forger. About a month after the announcement, it was shown that sections of the Gospel of Thomas had been copied to try to add credence to this book. A whole book was written to debunk this whole idea, right? The book is titled A Harvard Professor, a Con Man, and the Gospel of Jesus' Wife.
So Vegapod there's pointing out how what he's referencing, the Gospel of Jesus' Wife, is a known forgery. And this is something that was in the news, that it was a known forgery after it was discovered. Anything you find about its credibility is in the early stages of discovery before they really looked into it. And so Billy's just out of touch, out of step, and yet he's going around making these claims all confidently. A real shame, and that's why we're going to do our best to make sure that this video sees the light of day. Thank you guys very much. Happy Thanksgiving to you. You know I got love for you. Much love. God bless.